Now that we're in the 3D workspace, I'm going to show you some of the basic 3D modelling tools that we have available. And these sit in the modelling panel on the Home tab. So I'm going to show you the box tool first. Now, in order to show this easier, I'm going to just make sure that I'm in the home position on my view cube so that I've got X and Y sitting across the floor and the Z axis is pointing up. So I'm going to click on the box tool, and the first thing it says is specify first corner. So wherever I click will be the corner of the box, and you can see that I'm drawing the 2D shape first. Everything that we draw in AutoCAD when it comes to 3D shapes normally starts with a 2D shape first, and you can see that that's running along the X and Y axes. It's really important to note that everything starts on the X and Y plane. So just as before with the 2D shapes, I get the option to put in some dimensions. So I'm going to type in 1000 millimeters, and then I'm going to press the tab button and type in 1000. And now I get the option, the third option, to put in a height. So here I could choose 1000 again. And there is my cube. And if I hold down the shift button and use my middle mouse wheel, I can start to navigate around this object. Now you can see that, just as we were saying before, if I look at this from the left, you can see that the 2D part, the bit that we drew first, the 2D shape, is sitting directly on the X and Y plane. And that's really important to note, because that is basically going in at 0 on the Z coordinate. Okay, let's have a go at another shape then. Let's have a go at the cylinder. That's on the same drop down, and you can see exactly as before. Let me just make sure I'm in the home position for this. Okay, and you can see my X and Y is sort of sitting down flat on the floor. So the first thing I'm going to put in is the circle of this cylinder. So I'm going to click, and that's going to be the center of my circle. I can choose a radius, let's say 500. And now, as I start to draw up, you can see that I can put in the height. Now this cylinder looks slightly strange, but you'll see why in a second. Okay, let's put in a cone, just as before. We get the X and Y for the 2D shape, so that's going to sit flat on the floor in line with the X and Y. Let's put in 500, and then I get to draw the cone shape, and let's put that up by 1000. Let's have a go at the next one, which is a sphere. Now the sphere will draw from the center, so I'll put that over here. And just do a click for the center, type in 500, and then let's put in a pyramid. Let's put that over here, and that's going to be 500 by 1000. Then let's have a look at a wedge. Now the wedge will draw a rectangle first, so let's say 1000. Let's do this one by let's say 500 high. There we go, there's a wedge. And then let's put in a torus, which is kind of like a donut shape. And this one this one's slightly strange, so we're going to do a center click, then we're going to pull out for our radius, so let's put in 500. Then we get to put in the diameter for our torus shape, so let's put in 200. And there is our torus shape. And they are the basic modelling 3D shapes. Now they do look a bit strange, but that's because we're in a certain visual style called wireframe. And you can see on this drop down here it says 2D wireframe. And these are the different visual styles that we have. So if we go into conceptual, that starts to flesh things out a little bit more and starts to show us the drawings as if they were solid shapes. Let's have a look at hidden. You can see that we now have these visual shapes showing slightly differently, and we can see that we no longer see the internal wireframe elements. We can only see the parts of the shape that we would actually see if it was real. Let's go to the next one, which is realistic. Now this isn't really going to do a lot at the moment, but this is the visual style that we need to be in when we start to apply materials to these shapes. And you can see that we start to get some hints of light and dark, shade and shadow. Okay, let's have a look at the next one, which is called shaded, which is sort of a computer generated shaded view. And then let's try shades of grey. And just as you would expect, it's shades of grey. We have sketchy, which will make them look as though they've been sketched with a pen. And then we have X-ray, which will show us all of the drawing, the front and the back. You can see the edges of the objects are in a sort of brighter white than the back. Okay, so I'm going to go back into conceptual. So if I press the shift key and use my middle mouse wheel, you can see that I can rotate around this world and look at every side of these shapes. As well as being able to change the visual styles on this drop down here, we can also do it on the view panel of our home tab. And here you can see that we have all of those visual styles listed as icons that we can click on. Now these shapes at the moment are drawn in a kind of mathematical view, and so you can see that things don't kind of look very realistic. This angle here, for example, is exactly as this angle here, and that is because on the view we are in something called parallel, which means that everything's drawn in a sort of a computer generated mathematical way. But if we select perspective, you can now see that everything starts to sort of change slightly and look a bit more realistic, because now we have a vanishing point for our angles. And so as we start to navigate around these, they start to look a little bit more realistic. We also have a horizon now, and we can see where our vanishing point is. Now when you're drawing, I recommend that you are in the parallel view, because you'll see here that if I go to look at this from the top, and I'll change this to being in 2D wireframe just for ease, you can see that if I was to put another box next to this one, that it makes it easier to be able to snap to those edges of the first box. Whereas if I was in perspective, now it makes it slightly trickier to know which line I'm supposed to be snapping to, because of the way that the vanishing point works. And you have to be a little bit more, it's a little bit trickier to work out. Now if we try to draw a basic 3D shape, let's say a box, looking at this drawing in a slightly different view, let's say that we're looking at this from the top, and let me just go back to 2D wireframe. Again, you can see we can put in our 2D shape first, so let's put in 1000 for our height and our width. And now for the height, well, you can't really see it, we just get this yellow dotted line, and that is because the Z axis, the Z coordinate, is actually coming towards us as if it was sort of popping out of the screen. And that can be slightly confusing to begin with when you don't really understand what's happening. But as you can see by our UCS, we can see the X and the Y, but we can't see the Z, it's sort of not showing, and that's because it's coming straight towards us. If I just press down the shift and use my middle mouse wheel just to rotate around just ever so slightly, you can now see what's going on. You can see the Z axis is pointing up and down, and you can now see that I can put in my height. Now what I would always recommend when we start to draw is that you put your height in going up rather than down, because as you remember me saying in the last video, the X and Y is on the 0 coordinate of our Z. So if we was to start putting it our height in going down, then actually we're going into sort of minus numbers on the coordinate system, and if we go up then we're in positive numbers. Now you can sort of choose which way you're going to go, but it's just worth knowing that when we come to doing 3D printing or anything like this, then we really need everything to be in positive values.